Good afternoon. Welcome to Real Talk with Brian and Dan. I am Dan.
I'm Brian.
Welcome to the show. We have a great one lined up for you this week. We have Sean Turnquist of Seattle Modern Office and Michael Santiago of Nerds to Go. But first, let's have some Real Talk.
So, Dan, tell me about the economy and impact on real estate.
Okay, that's a loaded question.
I know
Let's
it
talk
is.
about that. The economy, as many people last week, economic numbers came out, GDP came out, and I'm not an economist, so I don't know what any of that stuff means.
What are you seeing in the real estate marketplace?
But what I'm seeing is that the buyers that we're interacting with right now are very positive. So they have some confidence in the sense that they're going to be somewhere for a while.
So how's your open house traffic? That's often an indicator.
Yeah, well, this weekend we held your Demery Hill home open in Sammamish, and I believe we had, on Saturday, you had about 13, 14 parties.
I had 14 groups,
okay,
about 60 people altogether.
And all of them were motivated buyers.
Motivated buyers, confident.
It was kind of interesting to see whether or not they were looky-loos, whether they were just kind of out there checking to see. It's kind of funny as you look at the housing market in relation to, I saw a report on the fastest growing cities in the nation, which ones are actually adding new construction. And Seattle was number 9.
Interesting.
So, and I think their new building permits were up 2.9%. So, Austin was in there, Dallas was in there, LA was in there, new construction. So a lot of the new builds, the folks that are doing new construction, they're only going to do it if they see a long-term economic outlook, right? The resales are kind of resales. They're going to do what they're going to do. And then, as we know, Amazon has refreshed their HQ2, and essentially it's being put around the Seattle area.
So I know in Sammamish, I'm seeing an awful lot of new construction in the 1.2 million plus.
Oh, plus.
And I'm seeing it move.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just amazes me how much money is in the marketplace
that
I'm seeing these buyers pour in that price point.
Yeah, and new construction, one of the things that you want to pay attention to is, because it's going up so fast, pay attention to the quality.
Right.
Always recommend getting an inspection. We talked about that last week. All right, well, so that's the economy. Let's shift gears to cost of renting versus buy. Yeah.
So if you're renting, you are paying a mortgage. It's just not yours. So that's one of the things we often encourage people is if you decide to put down roots, it's a good time to buy.
A lot of people are talking about how millennials don't really value homeownership. What are you seeing there?
I think we're seeing more and more millennials move to a stage of life where they're recognizing the benefits. I have 4 kids. I've got millennials of my own I'm talking with, and they're realizing that some real economic benefits of homeownership by, in essence, a forced savings account. You see home values appreciate, but putting that rent into something long term, there's instead of rent, a mortgage, and then having that pride of ownership. I'm starting to see that more and more frequently. And I think the biggest objection I hear when I talk to millennials is it's become harder to accumulate a down payment because of some of the employment prospects out there. But we have down payment assistance programs. We have ways of making it work. So I'd say for our listeners, if that's holding you back, give us a call. We have ways of helping you with that down payment.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen in the past with down payment assistance programs is if you made a working wage, you really didn't qualify. Right? So I believe Washington State Housing Finance Commission upped their minimum. Is it minimum or maximum
income
up to 130-ish. One of our lenders can tell us what it is.
Right.
But having a working wage means you can actually afford to get that down payment. And there's other ways to get down payments. What are some of the more creative ways some of your clients have acquired a down payment for?
Well, it's interesting. I've found very frequently family members who are willing to help.
Right.
You just got to go ask. And surprisingly, often this is gifts or sometimes it's loans, but family members who will help, but also employers who have down payment assistance programs. And then we have both grant money and loan money available for down payment. Typically, a loan is not permissible for down payment, but within these programs, it's designed specifically for that.
So one of the things that I've often done in this rent versus buy analysis is I'll do a side-by-side comparison.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some good tools with the Northwest Multiple where you can actually plug in a rent amount, you can plug in a savings amount over 5 years, and you can plug in what your mortgage might possibly be, and it'll tell you what the cost of renting versus buying is over a certain amount of years. Many of the listeners out there want something like that. They can just email us at radio@theeastsiderealestateteam.com. But what's funny about that is when you show it to somebody, it's important that you point out to them the like kind property. Right? Because if you're comparing a one-bedroom condo apartment to a three-bedroom house, well, of course it's going to be cheaper to rent than to buy.
Right.
But if you're talking about a three-bedroom
apples to
house,
apples.
a three-bedroom house in Issaquah or a three-bedroom house in Bellevue, the price is going to be a little different, right?
Right.
And I've heard there's softening on the rental market. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that, but there's a lot of new rentals going out right now.
Right.
So it may be, it's something that you would want to really carefully analyze.
So one of the things I've heard, there was a National Association of Realtors statistic out recently I read. So correct me if I'm wrong, but accumulation of wealth, renter to owner, my memory is that owner had 45 times more
45
wealth accumulated than the typical renter.
So why do you how does that math work?
I think a lot of it is that, a home is the biggest asset that most people will own. And if you understand, the concept of leverage, when a home appreciates, you get the percentage increase on the entire value of the home, not your down payment.
Yeah.
So say you put, I'm going to use real easy math, a 10% down payment on a $100,000 house. And there's no $100,000 houses out there, but easy math. And you get a 10% growth. Well, you doubled your money. You didn't get 10% of 10,000. You got 10% of 100,000.
Right.
And so I think that the home appreciation is a big factor in that accumulation of wealth.
Yeah.
But also every month you're paying down that mortgage. You're building equity through, eliminating the mortgage.
Well,
so you're
and
two
a
ways.
part of that is you're paying interest, right? You're paying interest, but you're also paying principal, which is basically a fancy word for forced savings plan.
Yes, and also you're getting the tax benefits of
Yeah.
home ownership. The interest is deductible. You get the benefit of a tax incentive as well. So
Yeah.
you're able to pay less tax.
Yeah. I know in my late 20s, if I would have thought about buying the house that I was renting and had three other roommates that were helping pay my mortgage, I would have figured out a way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the honest truth. All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit along the lines of affordable housing. Two trends that are kind of happening right now that are helping homes stay affordable. And it all ties into the economy.
Right.
So if we talk back to what's happened this week, interest rates most likely will go down because the stock market is going down.
I think it's more related to the bond market. Bonds go up, rates go down, but we're seeing a strong economy, which is fueled by jobs. You're reading the jobs report; they're fabulous.
Yep.
And with rates coming down, it makes homeownership even more affordable.
So going back to that correlation of the bond market, you're 100%. I agree with that 100%. But what I've noticed is investors move their money from the stock market to the bond market when the stock market is erratic.
Right.
Because the bond market's more secure. So by doing that, they're less enticing people to buy the bond market, so they reduce the rates.
I think that's correct.
Is that a stretch?
No, I don't think so. But I think in terms of translating this to our listeners, is the lower rates mean homes are more affordable, and rates right now are the best they've been in years.
Yeah.
And so home affordability. So then the question comes up: prices are so high. Should I buy anyway? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, if the numbers work, we can sit down and do an analysis, and again, it goes right back to the rent versus buy. You're paying a mortgage. Is it cheaper is it a better option for you to own than to rent? And if it is, do it.
Yeah, and I remember back in 2008 and 9 where we were running up in the run up to this crash that happened, right? And one of the big issues at that point was, but people are not making as much money anymore.
Right.
And now we're starting to see that start to happen. As you show, the other trend that's happening with affordable housing is income is rising. Right? Because it's such a tight market, hard to find good people, you have to entice them by offering them more money.
Right. So I think it's you that told me the average hourly earnings have grown 3.2%.
Yeah.
When? Is that over what period? Do you remember?
I believe it was in the first quarter of this year.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
So people are getting more money for doing what they're doing. That's awesome.
So one of the other things just to think about is what I often tell my first-time buyers, Buy a house, give yourself a raise. I mentioned that the tax deductions are there. A lot of times what I find is people are concerned that they may pay more on the mortgage than they pay on rent. But if you know that you've got a tax deduction that you don't have now, you can decrease your withholding, which thereby increases your actual paycheck.
Right.
And so you're able to
and people
offset.
do that by adding add
exemptions to your withholding. And this is something I tell you, consult your tax advisor to get it right.
Right.
Because you don't want to have a big tax bill at the end of the year.
Right.
But by increasing your withholding, decreasing withholding, you're increasing your paycheck, which offsets which usually is a small increase, if there is one, in that mortgage payment.
All right. Last topic. We have a few more minutes left, but what I'll do is one of our listeners sent a question in, and their question was, would changing the smallest bedroom to a walk-in closet off the master affect the value of my home?
It probably would. I think it depends. I mean, if you're going from a 3-bedroom to a 2, I'd say bad idea. It's tougher market on a 2. But if you have a 4 or 5 and you convert, to a big walk-in, it's probably a good idea. I did that on a home recently. We did a rehab, and we had what I would say for the price point of the home, which is $1 million plus. We converted a bedroom to a beautiful walk-in, and it enhanced the value of the home. It increased the value.
Well, I think another thing is to consider, and I didn't know this until an appraiser told me, but above grade rooms versus below grade rooms price differently according to appraisers.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you remove a room on the lower level, that's probably less of an impact on value.
Right.
But if you remove a room on the upper level, that's going to have a bigger impact on value. So just if you're going to do that in order to have some kind of understanding of what you're doing for the value of your house in the future, take those into consideration.
And I'd say for the listener that asked the question, it's more of a case by case. It depends on your current layout, but that's something we could easily analyze for you and would be happy to do so.
Awesome. All right. Well, that brings us to our break. We're now bringing into the studio 2 fantastic service providers here in the area. So after the break, we'll be back with Sean Turnquist of Seattle Modern Office. So come on back.